Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. Week 4 of the NBA done and dusted, and the injury bug starting to really take a toll on the league. It's seeing some interesting results throughout, but we're starting to see just a few different teams break away from the pack, a few others that are still a bit so-and-so, and others that, as we know, continue to drop away. But overall, this league is starting to get a little bit exciting. Now, let's get into it. Let's have a look at how Week 4 panned out for the 24-25 NBA season. And we will start, of course, in the East. We'll start with the Atlanta Hawks, who had a pretty good week. 3-0. They're now 4th in the Eastern Conference, 9-5 overall. Jalen Johnson, their best player, with their 3 games played. And he was arguably the best player in the league this week. 26.7 points, 12.7 rebounds, 9.7 assists, and 3 steals a game. 4 turnovers. Yeah, that is a little to be desired, but when you look at the effort being put forward all over the floor, you know, not a bad effort. 66.7 from the field, 72.7 from deep, and 76.2 from the free throw line. You're getting to a point now where if you're not sure how Trae Young is going to perform, well, for the rest of his time in Atlanta, you certainly have some more calming feelings when the likes of a Jalen Johnson are available, because, well, let's be honest, he is a guy that could be used as your number 1 option if you're going to build around a genuine team. And you've got a lot of defensive effort there as well. The defensive profile of Atlanta is very strong, and they're starting to show that as well. Mentioned before about the injury concerns that have been going through the league. And yeah, there's no doubt about it. Atlanta is one of those affected with Trae Young. They're not necessarily the most affected, but they certainly are one of the ones impacted, particularly with Trae Young, their number 1 player, not being available. Over to Boston, 2-1 on the week. They're now 7-7 overall. They've fought back to even keel, and they're 11th in the conference, so that puts them in a much better position. Jaylen Brown, in his 3 games played, 25.3 points, 8.3 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 1.2 turnovers. 44.8 from the field, 26.7 from deep, and 70.6 from the free throw line. I mean, the concern that we really have at the moment, as far as the Atlanta Hawks are concerned, ultimately is around, well, sorry, not the Atlanta Hawks, the Boston Celtics. I mean, it's ultimately around how soon can they get healthy. It's also around how are they going to manage their rotations. You look at someone like an Anthony Simons, who is trying to really have an impact on this team, but I just feel the 6-man role isn't his. You can't obviously take a Derek Wright and a Peyton Pritchard away because of the stripes that they've earned on this team, but it is something that does need to be considered when you really start to assess this team as to whether he's the fit. If they can try and get him some more minutes and try and get him a much hotter hand, I think they have a better record. But defensively as well, they've lost a couple of guys, and it's just looking a little bleak for Boston, even at 7-7. Over to the Brooklyn Nets, they've managed to get themselves away from the worst record in the league and the conference themselves. They're 13th now, 2-11 overall, still 1-2 record on the week. Michael Porter Jr., their best player, with 3 games there. 26.3 points, 8.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. Shot 47.3 from the field, 28% from deep, and 95.2 from the free throw line. Brooklyn just doesn't have any. I mean, their other potent scorer, Cam Thomas, he's not there. So there's not really much more to report in Brooklyn other than the fact that they're not playing well. They don't look like they're going to play well anytime soon. A team that we thought would peter off and has and will likely continue to do this for the rest of the year. Charlotte Hornets, 1-3 weekly record, 4-10 overall, 12th in the conference. Miles Bridges, their best player on the week, 22.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1 steal and 0.5 blocks on 2 turnovers. And some terrible shooting there, 42% from the field, 32.6 from deep, although converting at the stripe at 87.5. The real worry there at the end of the day, again, appears to be LaMelo Ball, who is in and who is out and up and down like a yo-yo. But it's okay because probably come back and get those 5 decent games under his belt, and everyone will scream that he's an all-star. It's a pretty consistent routine at this point with LaMelo Ball, Colin Knippel. He's playing really well. He was expected to be a pretty decent rookie, and he's doing that once again. He's shown some really consistent play, and when you factor in someone like a Brandon Miller, who's having an okay season, he's not having a great season, but he's having an okay season when he's on the floor, of course, then you look at the Charlotte side and there is really some upside, but the issue is that they look like a team that's going to peak out at 35 games when they do reach their absolute best and go through another rebuild. So I don't really know what the Hornets brass are thinking, but they're not thinking straight. The Bulls are 1-2 weekly records, 7-6 overall, and they are exactly where I thought they would be. They're 8th in the conference. They're back in the play-in tournament. Matas Buzelis, in his 3 games played, a real shining light where he can be, particularly from outside. 17.3 points, 8 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.3 steals and 2 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. Shot 46.3 from the field, 40% from deep and 88.9 from the free throw line, so he can absolutely shoot. But it comes down to injuries, it comes down to consistency, and it comes down to performance. And when you're trying to back in guys like a Josh Giddey and a Kobe White, obviously Kobe White has been injured. Josh Giddey has just had an ankle injury. And that's realistically your front line. Vucevic, when he's able to actually get hands on the ball and make decisions, has consistently proven over the last couple of seasons to be their best player. That just hasn't happened in the last couple of weeks, and the results have really shown. When you don't have guys like a Giddey or a Kobe White out there, it's probably the guy you should get the ball to. They just haven't been able to do that. I'm not saying he's the answer to all their problems by no means, but there seems to be a better flow to the offense with Chicago when that does happen in the absence of someone like a White and a Giddey. I don't see him really moving too much more from that 8th conference area. To be honest with you, I think they're going to be a playing team for most of the year. Cleveland, they've started to show some of their hype as well. 3-1 record on the week. They're 10-5 overall and 2nd in the conference. The performance of the Pistons really overshadowing what Cleveland is doing. Jarrett Allen, a few questions asked around him and his dodgy finger. Played in all 4 games this week and had a reasonably consistent week. 16 points, 7.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 0.3 steals and 0.8 blocks on, or 1.8 turnovers. 58.5% from the field, didn't make a 3, but shot 84.2 from the free throw line. About the only concern you can really have for Cleveland right now, well, there are a couple of different factors. Obviously, the injury bug at the moment. Jarrett Allen with his finger. Darius Garland re-injured that toe, so you have to ask whether he was healthy to begin with. Evan Mobley, certainly not having the impact that he did last year. He's playing well, but certainly not to the extent that he was last year. And there is a heavy reliance on Donovan Mitchell, who has to be one of the, 10 best players in the league this year, once again, as far as his impact with his team. It's just not there for Cleveland at the moment. And they're the 2nd best team in the conference, so they've still got a lot of improvement wiggle room to go. I wouldn't be too stressed if I was Cleveland. I don't think we're going to see 65 wins again this year by any stretch. But 64 wins, 65 wins, around that mark. I don't think we're going to see that again this year. But we're going to see one of the leading teams in the East as expected. Now, here's a team that was certainly not an expected leading team in the East. The Detroit Pistons. Everyone said they had a really shaky start, but anyone who watched Detroit and followed Detroit last year knew that was probably not necessarily the worst thing for them to find their footing and get moving. After a 2-2 start, they've won 10 in a row, 3-0 on the week. They're 1st in the East. And from a record standpoint, they've only got 1 less loss than the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, I'm not saying they're as good as the Thunder, but it does speak volumes to just the kind of team that they can be. Dennis Jenkins had a really good couple of weeks. 3 games played this week. He was the only guy to play from a lead standpoint in all of their wins. 21 points, 3 rebounds, 9.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 3 turnovers. Not bad for a guy on a 2-way contract. 47.3% from the field, 40% from deep, and we know he can hit them in the clutch, along with 83.3 from the free throw line. And this is a guy that people just really haven't spoken about. This team is really one that wasn't considered at the start of the year. Obviously, there's the talk of New York and Cleveland, which is fair enough. But I thought it was reasonable to say that Detroit were a team that could really push that top 6, could potentially flirt with an upset around that top 4. I certainly didn't think they were going to be a number 1, but to suggest that they were just another run-of-the-mill team after the leaps and bounds they made last year, a little bit ridiculous by some. Again, another team bitten by injury, but also a team with some really good upside. Someone like a Jalen Duren really lifting himself as one of the leading centres in the league this year, and that's pretty hard to contest there. So Detroit, they're humming along nicely. It's a matter of whether they've gone a little too early, but clearly some progress made. And from the best team in the East to the worst team in the East, the Indiana Pacers, 0-4 on the week. They're 1-13 overall, and they're last. That pretty much summarises it, along with the injury bugs. It does make you wonder just how valuable some of these pieces are, if this is the impact it's having, particularly at Tyrese Halliburton. At the end of the day, they're the worst team in the East. Pascal Siakam played in all 4 games, 26.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks and 1.8 turnovers. 50% from the field, 43.5 from deep, and 87.9 from the free throw line. Other than a bit of extra playmaking, I can't fault Siakam's play. There's just no one else on the team. Really simple. For the Heat, 1-7. They are 1-2 on the week, 8-6 overall, sitting in 7th. I thought they might be a team that misses the play-in, but here we are, and they are a competitive team fighting around the play-in spot, and certainly showing why. Particularly when someone like a Tyler Hero and a Bam Adebayo is currently out. Why they can still contend, why they can still be a problem. Norman Powell, the guy that the Clippers would love to have right about now, in his 3 games this week, 28 points, 2.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 0.7 steals on 2 turnovers, 50-40-90 splits at 51.7, 46.4 and 90 respectively. The Heat just continue to compete. They still continue to be thereabouts. We've only really seen 1 or 2 Heat teams in the last 25 years not make the postseason. And that's, not including from the D-Wade era onwards. So this is a team that can play. This is an organisation that knows how to get the best out of their players, and they're doing that once again. Norman Powell just continuing to step up. And considering I thought he was an all-star to the All-Star break last year, can he make that case again? It's going to be tough. But if the Heat keep winning games and he continues to be an impact player, there's no reason why. There's a few guys in the West that are doing that, and I think Norman Powell can certainly do that again. In the East, the Milwaukee Bucks, they've had a rough week, 1-3. They're now 8-7, and they've actually dropped down to 9th. Now, I don't know whether this is going to be a consistent factor. You've got to really weigh up the performance of a Giannis when it comes to this, and they themselves have a couple of players that are not in the lineup. Ryan Rollins, their best player on the week, 19.8 points, 4.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, to go with 1 steal and 2.8 turnovers. I mean, it suggests to me that he's got a lot of usage, so that you'd like a little bit more production. But if he was going to be a consistent second or third option in this team once it's healthy with numbers like that, you would be pretty pleased. 51.7 from the field, 52% from deep, 57.1 from the stripe is not what they wanted. For Milwaukee, bad week. For Giannis, not a great week. He didn't play in all of their games. But it does show the heavy dependence that this Bucks team does have on a Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't exactly know how they get around that. They have tried to design it essentially so they are 3-and-D guys and individual playmakers when he's not there, but it's a struggle for them at the moment to really get some consistency out of it when they're not there. Again, it's a really heavy dependent Giannis team. If he was to leave, I wouldn't be shocked if you saw them do similarly to a Cleveland when a LeBron left. To New York, they went 2-2 on the week, now 8-5, and they're sitting 5th. And I don't know whether it's a pressure thing. There is certainly a couple of injury concerns, but the Knicks just not exactly where we thought they would be. Really nice home record, really not good on the road, and they haven't been the greatest against some tougher competition. Karl Anthony Towns, he was their best player this week, 4 games played. I thought he was All-NBA last year and certainly a top 10 MVP finish. 24.3 points, 12.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists with 1.3 steals and 0.8 blocks on 2 turnovers. An inefficient week scoring for Cat, which didn't help either. 42.9 from the field, only made a third of his threes. 87 from the free throw line, so he was certainly getting there. The concern at the moment is their best player this year has been Jalen Brunson. I thought it was Karl Anthony Towns last year, but Jalen Brunson this year has reassumed that mantle, I should say, over the first few weeks. The issue now being is that he is out. He's out with an injury, and the guy who I thought was their best player last week, OG Anunoby, he is also out with an injury. So you lose 2 of your starting 5, you lose probably your best defender, and on top of that, you lose your best player. So it's going to be tough for New York, but they do have a bench. They do have some depth. They're running a different game plan this year, so to me, there is a chance that they will be able to hold out on it. It's a matter of if they're going to be able to do that. There's a lot of questions surrounding that. We'll see how they perform. For Orlando, they've managed to turn things. They're back at 500. As I said, this is a team that's been under 500 once in around a 3-year span. 2-1 on the record. They're now 10th in the conference. Franz Wagner, their best player in their 3 games played, 27.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. The efficiency isn't there, which is probably what caught them off guard in their loss. 41.7 from the field, a third of their threes made, and 77.4 from the free throw line there for Wagner. They also have now run into an injury bug, and that is that Paolo Banchero is out. So, again, you can't consistently lose a guy that, only a year or so ago was, for me, among one of the 10 best players in the league on that particular season, with the way he lifted, with the way he transformed, with the impact that he had for Orlando. To be fair, I thought Wagner early on in the season was one of the leading MVP candidates last year. We'll see whether there's a level of adaptation that can be made to Orlando's team. They have a little bit more depth this year from a starting lineup standpoint. They're giving opportunities for guys to step up in the second unit. This is their chance to prove it. They're at 500. They probably can afford 1 or 2 games to drop. If they were a little further under, I'd question it. But here's a team now. They can really try and experiment with lineups. A chance for guys to step up and really prove themselves. Philadelphia, they're a team that has stepped up. They're a team that has proven themselves. They're currently sitting 6th, and I think that's fitting if you're going to see them as a playoff team. But again, if health goes down the drain, if form goes down the drain, you're looking at a bottom 5 team. 2-1 weekly record. They're 8-5 overall, 6th in the conference. Tyrese Maxey continues to be one of the leading lights in the Eastern Conference, and certainly one of the leading candidates for All-NBA and MVP conversation so far this year. 30.3 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in those 3 games, along with 2.3 turnovers. His efficiency was down, though, so that probably explains a loss, and it certainly explains a bit of a dip in form. 41.3% from the field, 32.1% from deep, 95.2 from the free throw line. The next conversation that is starting to come into play here for Philadelphia is that Paul George is ready to return. It's then going to come down to a chemistry thing and a touches thing and a form thing here for Philadelphia, knowing that you've grown so much with Tyrese Maxey, you've got a lot out of VJ Edgecombe, you're trying to manage Embiid. Paul George is now thrown in the mix. Oh, by the way, Jared McCain is floating around the place. Andre Drummond's trying to get his minutes. You've seen step-up moments from some bench players as well. So the whole chemistry is going to change with Paul George. It could change the fate of this team. It may improve it, but it very well could change it. Over to the Raptors. They have been sneaky quiet, and this happens with the Raptors every time they have a good run. 4-0 on the week, 9-5 overall, and they are 3rd now in the Eastern Conference. Brandon Ingram starting to lift, Emmanuel Quickley starting to lift, and this guy, Scotty Barnes, continues to be consistent. In his 4 games played, 18.3 points, 9.5 rebounds, 6.3 assists to go with a steal and 2.3 blocks on 1.8 turnovers. 53.7 from the field, which does say a lot considering that he's only shooting 12.5% from deep, but 93.3 from the free throw line. For Toronto, they've just started to find their mix. They're starting to show that they've got some elite tier guys in this league. I mean, when you think of where the forwards are in this league, your small forwards, your power forwards, you don't consistently think of a Scotty Barnes anymore. He's not getting as much isolation play because he's now got some teammates around him. You're not thinking of Brandon Ingram because he's not got the spotlight of Zion Williamson, but that is a really good forward combo. When you're thinking of both sides of the ball, that's an excellent combo to have on your team, and they're proving it. It's really simple. We'll see how they go as the competition increases. Let's see in a couple of weeks at the end of November, start of December, where they sit, but a really good base to be. Trying to work your way 5, 6, 7 games above 500 gives you a bit of leniency if you've got players to rest, if you've got players injured. But Toronto, really nice start for them. But another team that just is struggling, they're the second worst team in the East. That's the Washington Wizards. 0-2 in the week, 1-12 overall. They have 1 more win than me this season, and they're 14th in the conference. Keyshawn George, 2 games played on the week, 22.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal and 0.5 blocks on 3.5 turnovers. He has, again, been another shining light in a dismal team. One of those young guys I've spoken about that need the development, that need to grow. But they don't have a lot of senior leadership around them, and the senior leadership they have probably should be getting some touches, a la CJ McCollum, a la Chris Middleton. But I do like the idea that someone like a Keyshawn George is able to step up and at least prove themselves in this poorer team. 48.5% from the field, 43.8% from deep, and 85.7% from the free throw line. To put a line through them is a really simple task. They are 10 games below 500. Again, if you go back through, that's the paces done for the season. And you're also looking at the fact that Brooklyn are very close to being done as well. So there's definitely 2 teams that are absolutely eliminated from playoff contention for me in the East. The Pacers certainly being one of them, and I thought they might be able to contend at some stage if they could pull it all together without Halliburton. Haven't been able to do it. They might do an old school Miami run and really push for it, but I don't see it happening. And Washington, the other team that have a line through them as well. Over to the West, we'll start with the Dallas Mavericks. 1-3 on the week, 4-11 overall. They're now 13th in the conference, and they are dangerously close to not being a factor at any point this year. They have fired Nico Harrison. Apparently Mark Cuban's back in control. Apparently Dirk Nowitzki's having a say. I don't know. But what they need to do is they need to base it around this man right here. Cooper Flagg has really started to jump out the last couple of weeks for his rookie season. He's starting to become a little more consistent. Now his role's going to be a little more prominent with the way things are in Dallas, but he's playing some really good basketball. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.3 steals and a block on 2.3 turnovers. He's already starting to get that elite league efficiency as well. 53.7 from the field, 37.5 from deep, 40% from the free throw line. Now, that's not great, but Shaq shot it. Difference being that Shaq averaged 38 points in a final series. So we'll see exactly what Dallas can do. There's just a lot of talk around roster structure at this point with the way the Mavericks are operating. Who knows how that's going to look? What do they do with Davis? Does Kyrie get back? But they're suffering with a lot more injuries beyond that as well. When you go and look at the injury list, there's a lot of key players that are still out for the Mavericks as well. Now, if they come back and they're able to put a little bit of a run together and try and push a little bit closer to 500, things are looking a bit different. I mean, at the end of the day, a 3-win week coming up gets them to 7-11. They're 4 games off the pace. Injuries return. There's a little more optimistic. But if they go a 1-2 or a 1-3 or a 0-3 over the next couple of weeks, then their season is vastly different. A team whose season is vastly different, Dallas's though, is the Denver Nuggets. A 3-1 record on the week, 10-3 overall. They're now second in the conference, and they're right up there where people expected them to be for the season. And a lot of it comes down to this man, Nikola Jokic, one of the leading contenders for the MVP race, and a guy who's having one of the most efficient seasons, whether it's mass production, superstar, however you want to measure it. He's having one of the best seasons ever. Better than last year, which is a scary thought. 38.3 points, 14.3 rebounds, 9.3 assists, 1.5 steals and a block on 3.3 turnovers. 65.5% from the field, 47.6 from deep, 84.6 from the free throw line. He is one of the most efficient offensive basketball players in the history of the sport, and he just continues to be more efficient. Now, here's a guy leading the league in rebounds. He's leading the league in assists. At one point, I don't know, I'd have to rewatch yesterday's game. At one point, had missed a shot from 16 to 23 feet, shooting 77% overall on true shooting, and shooting something like 80% on 2-pointers alone. So, epically efficient, just getting the job done. He's getting really nice help from Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, who are playing, to their end of season form. He's got some nice shooters and some nice scorers around him. There's a bit of bench depth. People are carrying defensively. Denver, about the only team right now that I would be concerned about if I was OKC. And even then, I wouldn't be worried about them if I was OKC. Denver having a really nice run. Golden State with a good recovery. A 3-1 week for them, moving them up to 9-6. So that really balances the ledger out from the 6-5 that they had. 7th in the conference because, of course, we know the West is pretty deep. But Steph Curry with a really nice week. A couple of 45 pieces over the last week or so, taking on the likes of a Victor Wembanyama. 28.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.3 steals and 2.3 turnovers, 46.7 from the field, 36.4 from deep, and 90.6 from the free throw line. Again, Golden State on their week, on their run, as inform a team as there is in the league, but it's a matter of being consistent, it's a matter of doing it when it matters. And the only worry that I'm going to have here is similar to what Chicago had a couple of years ago when you had DeRozan, when you had Levine, when you had Lonzo Ball, when you had Caruso. Can you string together 2 to 3 weeks of consistent basketball? Because at the moment, Golden State, a bit of an ebb and flow, and that is not what they need if they're going to compete in the West. Because, I mean, if they turn around and had a 1-3 or a 0-3 week, they're back to 500, which really makes it tough from there to try and fight. When you've got teams that are breaking away to, 6 and 7 games clear of 500 already on the season, it does become difficult. Now, they've got clear offensive firepower. They've got the ability to get it defensively. They just need to be consistent on both ends if they're going to get anything out of it. A team that has started to show consistency, and again, one of my top three picks, there. Obviously, my 4th pick was Dallas, and that's probably not going to end very well. But one of my 3 picks certainly was the Houston Rockets. They were undefeated on the week, 9-3 overall now, and they are 3rd in the conference. Kevin Durant just continuing to be Kevin Durant. 29.3 points, 5 rebounds, 4.3 assists to go with a steal and 0.3 blocks on 3 turnovers. Continues to be as efficient as any point in his career. 54.2 from the field, 36.8 from deep. We know he'll improve that. 94.4 from the free throw line. Durant has still somehow managed to mould his game into a team that says, hey, we need you as a bailout guy, but we're pretty confident if we can just sort of let you run around in our offense. He has plenty of times there where he gets his good isolation. He gets plenty of touches throughout, and other guys are contributing too, particularly when he's going to combine with someone like an Alperen Şengün, who is consistently their 2nd leading scorer, leading rebounder, leading assist guy. So, they're trying to run a lot of the offense through Şengün, which is great to see. But he's making the right decisions, and on top of that, Kevin Durant can realise that. He's getting it really easy from a scoring standpoint, probably the easiest that he's had it since he was a Golden State Warrior. A really nice turnaround for the Rockets, who are in the position they need to be. Not bad, considering that people wanted a fire sale 2 seasons ago for this team. Look where they've got to now. For the Clippers, a 1-3 week. They're 4-10 overall. They're 12th in the conference, and they are struggling, whether it's close games, whether it's defensively, whether it's age, whether it's injury. They really are struggling. 4 games played for James Harden this week. 32.3 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 0.8 steals, and 1.8 blocks on 3 turnovers. 40.2% from the field, 34.1 from deep, and 93.8 from the free throw line. We are seeing Houston Rockets James Harden at times here. He's had to get away from the foul baiting because of just how this league is working now. Some of the numbers are reflecting what he was doing in Houston, but at the end of the day, the guy has got a lot of miles under his belt. He's done a lot of this in the regular season. He proves that he can't do it in the postseason, and the guys that are going to help him in the postseason currently are injured. So I don't know what it is for the Clippers. They clearly are too old. They clearly don't care defensively. Chris Paul's getting DMP'd. And that'd be a shocking way for his tenure as a Clipper to end. You just wonder whether you throw him in the mix to see whether anything will change up. But the Clippers right now, they are much like Dallas, a couple of bad weeks away from totally being out of the playoff picture. And you would think a fire sale will have to go along with a team that is that old just to try and rebuild and try and do something. But at the end of the day, the Clippers don't have any draft picks either. So that's what they would have to be doing, trading for younger guys, trading for draft picks, trying to improve their hand from there. For the Lakers, 2-1 weekly record. They're 10-4 overall. They are the opposite of the Clippers, and they are sitting 4th in the conference. Luka with a subpar efficient week, but still somewhat productive amongst all of that. 28.7 rebounds, 7.7 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.7 steals and a block on 3.3 turnovers. 40% from the field, 34.6 from deep, and 77.5 from the free throw line. The concern there for the Lakers as well is going to be whether you fit in or fit out around LeBron James. It's a term I've heard over the last couple of weeks, and I don't mind it myself. Is LeBron going to fit in around this Lakers team and the way it's doing everything? Clearly the guy can still produce, so he's got to be of some asset to the team. Or is the team going to have to fit out? Are they going to have to destroy everything that they've done to try and build around LeBron? Now, the ultimate concern there is that LeBron has missed enough games and will likely miss more games throughout the year to the point where he's not going to make an All-NBA team and he's not going to be in contention for an award. So, that's something that probably gets understated about how important it is legacy-wise to LeBron to be able to build on that. And I get that he's old and he's injured and everything of that nature. But you also have to consider that he's not going to be there for a consistent amount of time compared to some of these other guys who are going to be in contention for these kind of awards and recognition. Then maybe he does need to just simply fit in. Whether he does and whether he can, I don't know, because he's not an off-ball player. But when you've got Reeves, when you've got Doncic, when you've got Ayton, Rabia that are trying to really get some production, you've got to do something around them. For the Grizzlies, they're a team that is on the slide, and again, they have injury woes as well. Didn't win a game this week, 4-10 overall, 11th in the conference. And again, that sort of speaks of how tight it is in the West, particularly for some of these lower-ranked teams. The separation between 14th and 11th really isn't too much. Jaren Jackson Jr., their best player in those 3 games, and even he had a real change-of-pants kind of operation this week. 21 points, 4.3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.3 steals and 0.7 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. At this point, he's carrying too much of an offensive load to really have an impact defensively. 38.5 from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 85.7 from the free throw line. Memphis are at the point now where they're still talking about trades, they're still talking about culture, they're still talking about responsibility, and they're still talking about an injury list. I mean, again, a couple of bad weeks here for Memphis, and their season is done. And there's going to be a few teams in this boat that come December are pretty much going to be out of playoff contention. It does make some other teams more interesting, but it doesn't make the rest of the league bearable to watch, and that's the situation we're currently looking at with Memphis. Whether Jar gets back, we don't know. Someone like a Brandon Clark is also out, so they're losing some of that more potent firepower that can be around to support them. When you've got the inefficiencies out of a Jaren Jackson offensively and not the production you need defensively, that's when you start to see a bit of an issue. That's currently what we're seeing with Memphis. For Minnesota, they've sort of rode the wave a little bit here, and they're starting to really gel. They're 2-1 on the week, 9-5 overall to be sitting in 6th. I thought they would be a top 6 team. They're a team that probably can take a little more advantage of those that aren't going to be, well, exactly primed and ready to go. Julius Randle, he's been proven consistent all year. 21.3 points, 7.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists to go 1.3 steals and 1.7 turnovers. Inefficient, 44.9 from the field, 28.6 from deep, and 76.2 from the free throw line. But he's proven a really good pinch hitter alongside of an Anthony Edwards. They're one of the more potent duos in the league. You've also got the fact that Jaden McDaniels is still trying to get things done. Naz Reid has been really good off the bench. DiVincenzo trying to perform as well. And of course, Rudy Gobert, still consistently one of the best rim protectors in the league. Again, just the simple fact that people wanted to ridicule him is ultimately why he has managed to earn the reputation that he's had. But name a really good interior defensive centre that has had limited offensive game, that has been the guy called upon. That's just the generation we live in and the understanding of the game that's not there anymore. But a really nice work there for Minnesota. They're starting to plug away, and on a personal note, really liking the fact that Julius Randle is in one of my fantasy teams. Speaking of fantasy team, that's the New Orleans Pelicans if they weren't injured, because everybody at the moment is just unavailable for them, and it shows. Didn't win a game this week. They're 2-12 overall. Put a line through them. They're done, and they are 15th. They are dead, stone, motherless last. Trey Murphy just trying to put a bit of respect in there. Consistently one of their top performers for the last 2 seasons. 23.8 points, 6.3 rebounds, 2 assists to go with 2 steals on 3.8 turnovers, 54.1 from the field, 41.4 from deep, 100% from the free throw line. Let's have a look overall at everyone in the West, and yep, pretty safe to say the first team eliminated from contention, the New Orleans Pelicans. Congratulations, the year's over. And on the other side of things, New Orleans with 2 wins for the season. Oklahoma City only with the 1 loss. 4-0 on the week. They're 14-1. They're number 1 in the league, number 1 in the conference, and there's no sign of them slowing down. The conversation is now around not if, but by how much can they potentially break the all-time single-season win record set by the Golden State Warriors in 2015-16, 73-9. There are predictions as high as 75 for Oklahoma City right now. For Shea, he just continues, from me, to be the MVP of the league. No one has led their team to more wins and kept them in contention with a level of consistency of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He has been on since game 1. 28.5 points, 4 rebounds, 8.8 assists to go, 2.5 steals and 0.3 blocks on 1.8 turnovers. Yes, that's right, a rounded 29, 4 and 9 and 3 steals with less than 2 turnovers. Shooting 56.9 from the field, 50% from deep, 90.6 from the free throw line. You know, as many short and sweets that I do for bad teams, it's essentially where I'm going to leave it for Oklahoma City. They've still got guys to come back in. They've got the number 1 rated defensive individual player in the league, and they have one of the most efficient shooting guards of the century. Looking like he's going to win another MVP award, depending on where the team finishes. The Thunder are rolling. For the Suns, they're trying to pick up 2-1 weekly record, 8-6 overall. They're 8th in the conference, and you know, this is a team I thought would be a bottom 5 team, but there's been a couple of other disappointments in the league that are really helping their case. Devin Booker, I think, has had a really solid season. A guy who's probably had a top 10 season. I know that Phoenix have had a lot of questions around their fixture at the moment, but they are playing some consistent basketball. 28.7 points for Devin Booker, along with 3.3 rebounds, 7.7 assists, a steal and 0.3 blocks on 3.7 turnovers, 45.3 from the field, 15.8 from deep, 96.2 from the free throw line. Dylan Brooks also being a really consistent impact player there for the Suns. Now, there is a concern. Grayson Allen is a pretty key injury for them. at the moment. They also have another guy injured, and I wish I had him off the top of my head. But Grayson Allen, having had an injury, that does take away from their floor spreading. He is one of the elite three-point shooters and one of the better 3-and-D guys in this league at the moment. But Phoenix right now are sitting probably above standard where we thought they would be. We'll see how the rest of the season pans out. We'll give it towards Christmas when things start to tighten up, and a few other teams have been eliminated from playoff contention. But someone like a Devin Booker, he's going to be consistent, always has been for the last few years. Really rode the wave from that rise in Phoenix in the early 2020s. We're sitting in the mid-2020s. Is he still performing? The only issue is he's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Anthony Edwards as a shooting guard. Beyond that, he's been really consistent. Again, a guy who can go from being the lead scorer to your lead distributor. Portland, a team that I thought was going to be bottom 5, and they've had a couple of shaky weeks, which has changed their outlook. 1 and 2 weekly records, 6 and 7 overall for everyone out there that's moving their hands up and down. And 9th in the conference, so they are still in that play-in tournament contention. Shaden Sharp with his best week this season, and a real shining light over there in Portland. 30 a game to go with 4.7 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. 48.5 from the field, 28.6 from deep, and 76.9 from the free throw line. This is still a guy that can get the job done. This is a guy that can still be consistent. He's a guy that's really taken his time to come on, which is fine. It certainly hasn't been as slow as a Scoot Henderson. But when you look at the fact that someone like a Shaden Sharp can produce like this, you add in the fact that he's able to have a go with someone like Denny Avdia and Drew Holiday, it does lead a lot more upside there for Portland. They've obviously got injuries. They've had some really inconsistent lineups over the last couple of years. They probably should be in a more commanding position, which unfortunately they're not. But at the end of the day, Portland do have some upside. I would think if they can remain that way, that they'll start to really still be around that same mark with Phoenix. If they fall away, I'm not shocked, but really positive start for them. They look like they're going to be above that 30-odd win mark that they had last year. Speaking of teams that just have to blow it up, this is a failed experiment already. They've already moved Dennis Schroeder out of the starting lineup to maintain Russell Westbrook. But the Sacramento Kings, 0 and 4. I thought this was a team that could compete at least in the lower seeds of the playoff contention in the West, but that's not going to happen. They are too offensively minded. They can't get it done defensively, and this guy right here, for me, isn't getting enough touches, and that's when Sacramento have looked their best. A 3-1 overall, 3-11 overall record for 14th. Domantas Sabonis was their best player this week, but when you look at what he's putting up compared to what he has in the past, I mean, this is a guy that's just been robbed and neutered of his skills. 20.5 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3.5 assists. I mean, Sabonis consistently was 17, 14, and 7 last year. He needs to get more of the ball. He needs to be your decision maker, and you need these guys to play off ball and stop stroking their egos. Particularly as Zach LaVine has proven to be an issue, and DeMar DeRozan's just getting old. It's just a fact. 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks to go with those turnovers there. 55.9 from the field, 28.6 from deep, and 70% from the free throw line. They're not good defensively. They're not consistent offensively. Yeah, everyone else gets their looks, but you go and watch Sacramento, it becomes a lot of isolation basketball. There's not a lot of team play there, and again, I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that someone like Sabonis isn't really controlling it. He's a point center. He's the second best point center in the league. He's one of the best passing bigs ever. The issue being that he plays in the era of the greatest passing big. But Sacramento need to do something very quick. They're a week or two away from being out of the playoffs. For the Spurs, their big injury concern has come to fruition for the next couple of weeks, and they've already got another one there as well. But the Spurs 1 and 2 in the week, 9 and 4 overall, 5th in the conference still, so they're still in that playoff contention. De'Aaron Fox has returned. He's had a really nice week. 21.7 points, 3.7 rebounds, 8.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 4 turnovers. 48.4 from the field, 40% from deep, and 100% from the line. But probably their 2 leading players this year are now out. Obviously, the big concern is Victor Wembanyama with a calf strain. He's going to be out for a few weeks, and that then starts to ask the question about how many games is he going to actually get in on the year. The other question that then comes to fruition is someone like a Stephon Castle, who is also out, and he's proven to have taken that next step. He's clearly more improved since his rookie year, but it's a matter of, now he's injured. He's banged up. He's a guy that you need to get back on the floor if you're going to have any sort of impact. The Spurs have plenty of talent there. There's no doubt about it, and if they can just wade the storm and stay around, 500, a little bit over, then they'll stay in that playoff contention. You can weave those guys back into your side. I don't think we're going to see this huge shake-up that everyone was expecting. Again, early on, different question. I still think that Wemby is clearly the best defender in the league. He can be an MVP candidate, and I thought he was pretty close halfway through last year. At the end of the day, though, it's going to come down to injuries with this Spurs team. We'll see how they can wade through them. And finally, we head on over to the Utah Jazz with a 2-1 week, 5-8 overall. They're now in play in contention, and another team that is taking advantage of some of these poorer squads. Lauri Markkanen, 3 games this week, averaged 40.7 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 2 assists to go with a steal and a block on 1.7 turnovers. 55.8 from the field, 47.2 from deep, and 86.4 from the free throw line. And as everyone has suggested, this is a guy that is really, really boosting his stocks and really trying to make sure that, hey, I'm still about, I'm a chance, I can really do something for a contending team. Many people suggesting he's going to be a key trade watch. It depends what Utah want to do. If they have a couple more injuries to go, then yeah, you probably do look to get rid of him. But at the end of the day, you also can't afford to get rid of a guy who's had two pieces of 45 or greater this year and is clearly the bright shining light on your team, along with Keontae George. So we'll see how they go. Markkanen with a really solid week, continuing to boost his stocks, and the Jazz floating thereabouts. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That has been my wrap and my review for week 4, the 24-25 NBA season. It is really ticking along fast here, folks, and it is starting to get excited. I'd like to see that league-wide injury list come down to more questionables than outs, but at the end of the day, that's how the game's played in the modern era. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.